They say a wolf knows its mate by scent alone. That one breath of their essence can rewrite your entire existence. But what they don't tell you is what happens when that same wolf, your fated mate, your alpha, your entire world, looks past you as if you're nothing but shadow and smoke, and places the crown meant for you on another woman's head. My name is Astrid Thornawood, and I stood in that great hall 3 months ago, my hand pressed against my still flat stomach, feeling the flutter of a secret that would shatter kingdoms. I watched Jarl Eriksson, alpha of the Silvercrest pack, the man who had whispered promises into my skin just weeks before, take Signa Ravenska's hand and declare her his Luna in front of 7 allied packs. The Moonstone crown should have been mine. The title should have been mine. But most importantly, he should have known that the child growing inside me carried a bloodline so ancient, so powerful, that every wolf in that room would have bent their knee had they known the truth. Instead, I became invisible. But here's what Jarl didn't know, what none of them knew. My grandmother didn't just tell me bedtime stories about the Blood Moon lineage. She didn't just trace her fingers over faded tapestries depicting wolves with eyes like liquid silver. She marked me, blessed me, and bound me to a destiny that even I didn't fully understand until the night I stood in that hall and felt my wolf stir for the first time in my life. I was 23 years old, and I had never shifted. Not once. They called me defective, broken, a wolf without a wolf. My father had been a powerful beta before rogues tore him apart when I was 7. My mother disappeared into her grief shortly after, leaving me to be raised by my grandmother Brynhild in the forgotten corners of pack territory. But that night, as Signa's lips curved into a victorious smile and she placed her perfectly manicured hand over Jarl's heart, the heart I thought belonged to me, something cracked open inside my chest. Not my wolf emerging, not yet. Something older, deeper. A knowing that sang through my bones like an ancient hymn. The child I carried wasn't just any heir. It was the heir. The one the prophecies whispered about. The one that could unite the packs or burn them all to ash. And I had 30 seconds to decide whether to speak up or disappear. I chose disappearing. Sometimes survival looks like cowardice. Sometimes it looks like cunning. That night, it looked like me slipping through the crowd of celebrating wolves, past the tables laden with roasted meat and honey wine, past the warriors already drunk on triumph and politics, and out into the November cold where my breath formed clouds that the wind tore apart. I ran until my lungs burned. Until the sounds of celebration faded into the whisper of pine trees. Until I reached the boundary stones where pack territory ended and the wild lands began. Those forgotten forests where rogues roamed and old magic still pulsed beneath the earth. My grandmother's cottage sat just beyond those stones. Technically outside pack protection. Technically forbidden. Technically where I'd spent most of my childhood learning things that would have gotten us both exiled if anyone had paid attention to the strange old woman and her wolfless granddaughter. Brynhild was waiting for me on the porch, as if she'd known I'd come running. As if she'd seen this exact moment in whatever visions plagued her dreams. She was wrapped in her usual collection of shawls and furs, her white hair loose around her shoulders, and her eyes, those unsettling silver eyes that marked her as something other, something more, fixed on me with an intensity that made me stop at the edge of her garden. "So he's done it then," she said. Not a question. A statement heavy with inevitability. "He crowned Signa." My voice cracked on her name. "He looked right through me, grandmother. Like I was nothing. Like those nights meant nothing. And you told him about the child." The words stuck in my throat. I couldn't. Once he crowned her, once he made it official, I couldn't. Brynhild descended the porch steps with surprising grace for a woman who claimed to be nearly 90. She cupped my face with hands that smelled like sage and pine sap and old paper. "Good," she said simply. "Then perhaps you're finally ready to hear the truth." She led me inside, sat me down at her scarred wooden table, and poured me tea that tasted like moonlight and promises. And then, while the fire crackled and cast dancing shadows on walls covered in herbs and strange symbols, my grandmother told me who I really was. "The blood moon line didn't end with your father, Astrid. It went dormant waiting. Your great-great-great-grandmother was Ursa Bloodmoon, last of the true silver alphas." She could command any wolf with a thought, could heal mortal wounds with her touch, could see threads of fate before they were woven. The old packs feared her power so much that they bound it, diluted it, bred it out through 7 generations of strategic matings. But I don't have any power, I protested. I can't even shift. Can't you? Her silver eyes glinted. Or have you simply never needed to before? She reached across the table and placed her palm over my stomach, and I felt it. A pulse of warmth, of recognition, of something vast waking up inside me. That child carries pure blood moon lineage, Astrid. Jarl's alpha blood merged with yours has awakened what was sleeping. And now you have a choice to make. What choice? Hide until the child is born and hope no one discovers what you're carrying. Or embrace what you are and take back what should have been yours all along. I wanted to choose hiding. Every instinct screamed at me to choose safety, obscurity, survival. But then I remembered Signa's smile. Jarl's blank expression when he looked past me. The years of being called defective, broken, less than. Tell me everything, I said. And she did. My grandmother's training was nothing like the combat drills the pack warriors endured. There were no practice fights, no obstacle courses, no demonstrations of strength. Instead, she taught me to be still. To listen, to feel the pull of the moon even during the day, to sense the threads that connected every living thing in the forest, to understand that true power wasn't about domination. It was about belonging so completely to the world that the world bent toward you in recognition. Your wolf hasn't emerged because she's been waiting for you to be ready, Brynhild explained during our 3rd week of training. She's not like their wolves, quick to anger, quick to fight, quick to submit to pack hierarchy. She's older than their wolves. She remembers when we ruled not through fear but through balance. How do I call her? You don't call her. You become her. There's no separation, Astrid. That's what they've forgotten. The wolf and the human aren't 2 beings sharing one body. They're one being experiencing itself in different forms. Sounded like mystical nonsense. Until the night it wasn't. I was gathering wood near the boundary stones when I caught Jarl's scent on the wind. He was close, closer than he should have been to the wildlands. And he wasn't alone. Signa's floral perfume mingled with his pine and leather scent, and I heard her laugh, that crystalline sound she wielded like a weapon in court politics. I don't understand why we're out here, she was saying. The boundary stones are so dreary, and it's freezing. I needed to check something, Jarl replied, and God's help me, my traitorous heart still jumped at his voice. There have been reports of rogues testing our borders. They emerged from the tree line 50 yards from where I stood frozen behind a massive pine. The moonlight turned them into a portrait of perfection. Jarl with his broad shoulders and dark gold hair, Signa with her willowy grace and that crown glinting in her elaborately braided hair. I should have stayed hidden. Should have waited for them to pass. Should have been smart. Instead, I stepped out into the clearing. Jarl's head snapped toward me immediately. His alpha senses sharp as always. Recognition flashed across his face, the first time he'd really seen me in 3 months, followed quickly by confusion and something that might have been concern. Astrid! He moved toward me. What are you doing out here? It's not safe beyond the stones. I live here now, I said, pleased that my voice remained steady. Or don't you remember? My grandmother's cottage is just beyond the boundary. Signa's eyes narrowed. The wolfless girl, she said, her tone making it clear exactly what she thought of me. I didn't realize you were still around. Most wolves without their shift leave the territory. It's kinder that way. The casual cruelty of it struck me like a physical blow. But beneath the hurt, something else stirred. Something with teeth. Is that what you think I am? I asked softly. Wolfless. Well, aren't you? Signa laughed. You're what, 23? 24. If you had a wolf, she would have come by now. Signa, Jarl said, his voice carrying a warning. But he didn't contradict her. Didn't defend me. Just stood there with that same blank expression he'd worn when he crowned her. And that's when it happened. The thing inside me that had been building for weeks, fed by my grandmother's training and the growing life in my womb and the sheer audacity of standing here watching my mate with another woman. It erupted. My first shift was nothing like the stories described. There was no pain, no breaking bones, no screaming transformation. One moment I was standing on 2 legs in my worn boots and my grandmother's hand-me-down coat. The next I was on 4 paws, and the world had exploded into scent and sound and sensation so overwhelming I nearly lost myself in it. But my wolf, she knew exactly what to do. She was massive, I realized dimly. Larger than Jarl in his alpha form. My fur shimmered silver in the moonlight, and when I looked at Signa through my wolf's eyes, I saw the threads my grandmother had described. The connections, the weaknesses, the fear that pulsed beneath her perfect exterior. Signa stumbled backward with a gasp. Even Jarl took a step back. His expression shifting from shock to something like awe. "Impossible," he breathed. "That's Astrid." My wolf wanted to go to him. Wanted to press against him and demand recognition. Wanted to show him what we were, what we'd always been. But I held control. And I made a choice. I turned away from them both, and I ran. I ran deeper into the wild lands than I'd ever ventured. Ran until their scents faded, and the only sounds were my own paws striking earth and the thundering of my heart. Ran until I found a clearing lit by moonlight where the boundary between forest and sky seemed thin enough to tear. And there, I shifted back to human form and collapsed on the moss-covered ground, gasping. I had shifted. After 23 years of nothing, of being broken and defective and less than, I had finally shifted. And my wolf wasn't weak or small or uncertain. She was glorious. She was powerful. She was exactly what Brynhild had promised. Word of my transformation spread through the pack like wildfire. By the time I returned to my grandmother's cottage the next morning, there were 3 pack members waiting at the boundary stones. Warriors sent to escort me back to pack territory. "Alpha Jarl requests your presence," the lead warrior said. His eyes carefully averted. Submission. He was showing me submission. I'd never experienced that before in my life. "Tell Alpha Jarl that I'm no longer under pack authority," I replied calmly. "I live beyond the boundaries. I answer to no one but myself. Please, Miss Thornawood." The warrior shifted uncomfortably. He was very insistent. Then let him be insistent. I have no interest in his demands. I turned to go, but the warrior called after me. "He said to tell you it's about your father. About what really happened to him." That stopped me cold. My father had died defending the southern border from rogues. That was the official story. The story everyone had told me since I was 7 years old. But I'd heard the whispers too. The inconsistencies. The questions that were quickly silenced whenever I asked them. "Tomorrow," I said finally. "Tell him I'll come tomorrow at dusk. And tell him I'll meet him at the Alpha's private study, not the Great Hall." The warrior nodded and left, and my grandmother emerged from the cottage with a knowing look. "So it begins," she said. "What begins?" "The game, child. Power is always a game. And now you're finally playing." I spent that day preparing. Not with weapons or armor but with the truth. Brynhild pulled out boxes I'd never seen before. Documents and letters and ancient pack records that should have been destroyed decades ago. "Your father discovered something," she said, spreading papers across her table. "About the old bloodlines. About who was being systematically removed from power and why. He was going to challenge the council, demand an investigation. And they killed him. They arranged for him to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. The rogues were real enough, but someone made sure your father was alone when he encountered them. Someone made sure no backup arrived in time." "Who?" Brynhild's finger traced across a document to a signature. "Thorvald Ravenska. Signa's father. Former council member." The room spun. "Signa's father killed mine. Ordered it killed, most likely. And I suspect Jarl knows. Or at least suspects. Why else would he have bonded with the Ravenska family so completely? Why else would he have chosen Signa despite?" She paused, her silver eyes meeting mine. despite having already met his true mate. He knew. The words came out as a whisper. From the beginning, he knew we were mates. The bond works both ways, Astrid. He felt it the same moment you did. But he's alpha, and alphas make choices based on politics and power, not fate. Signa brought him an alliance with the most influential families. You brought him nothing but questions about the past. I thought about those nights we'd shared. The way he'd touched me like I was something precious. The promises he'd whispered. The future I'd imagined. All of it a lie. Or worse. All of it true but not true enough to matter. The hurt crystallized into something harder. Something cold and sharp and focused. Then tomorrow we start getting answers, I said. The Alpha's study was exactly as I remembered from the few times my father had brought me there as a child. Dark wood paneling. Shelves lined with ancient pack histories. A massive desk carved with the Silvercrest pack sigil. And behind that desk, Jarl Eriksson, looking every inch the Alpha who'd consolidated power across 7 territories. He stood when I entered, and I caught the slight widening of his eyes as he took me in. I dressed carefully, not in the cast-off clothes I usually wore, but in one of my grandmother's ceremonial dresses, deep green wool embroidered with silver thread in patterns that marked bloodline and status. My hair hung loose, the way high-ranking females wore it, and I'd lined my eyes with ash the way Brynhild had taught me. I looked like what I was. Not a wolfless nobody, but a daughter of the Blood Moon line. Astrid. He moved around the desk but stopped several feet away, as if uncertain how close he should come. I'm glad you came. You mentioned my father. I came for information, not pleasantries. Something flickered in his expression. Hurt maybe. But I've been investigating your father's death, he said carefully. Since I became Alpha 2 years ago, I've been reviewing old incident reports. There are inconsistencies. Things that were overlooked or deliberately obscured. Like the fact that Thorvald Ravenska ordered it. The color drained from his face. How did you? My grandmother keeps better records than the pack archives. And unlike you, she wasn't willing to let my father's murder be swept under the rug for political convenience. It wasn't. He stopped, ran his hand through his hair in a gesture of frustration I recognized too well. I didn't know. Not when I agreed to the alliance with the Ravenskas. Not when I chose Signa as Luna. I only started finding evidence 2 months ago. 2 months. I let the words hang between us. You've known for 2 months that your Luna's father murdered my father, and you said nothing? I had no proof. Nothing concrete enough to act on without starting a civil war between families. So you chose peace over justice. How very Alpha of you. Don't, he said sharply. Don't make this about politics. You don't understand the pressure, the impossible choices. Don't I? I stepped closer. Close enough that I could see his pupils dilate, could feel the mate bond humming between us like a live wire. You want to talk about impossible choices, Jarl? How about choosing between telling your true mate you know she exists or taking another woman as your Luna? How about choosing between investigating your mate's father's murder or protecting your political alliances? You think I didn't feel it? His voice dropped to something raw and honest. That night we met, you think I didn't know exactly what you were to me? I felt it like lightning in my chest, Astrid. But I was trying to unite the packs, trying to prevent the kind of territorial wars that killed hundreds in my father's generation. The Ravenskas control 3 territories. Without their alliance, you'd have to actually work for loyalty instead of buying it with political marriages. He flinched. Is that what you think of me? I don't know what to think of you anymore. The admission cost me, but I forced myself to hold his gaze. All I know is that you made your choice. And I'm making mine. What choice? This was it. The moment to reveal the truth or keep my secret buried. My hand moved unconsciously to my stomach, and I saw his eyes follow the gesture. Are you? He stopped, disbelief and hope warring in his expression. Astrid, are you pregnant? That's none of your concern. You have a Luna. You have your alliances. You have everything you chose over me. If you're carrying my child, then what? Challenged. You'll reject Signa. Expose her father. Start the war you've been so desperate to avoid. We both know you won't. You don't know what I'll do. Don't I? Because it seems to me you've been perfectly clear about your priorities. And I'm not one of them. I turned to leave, but his hand shot out and caught my wrist. The physical contact sent a jolt through both of us, the mate bond surging, demanding acknowledgement, demanding completion. Please, he said, and the crack in his alpha composure was almost enough to break my resolve. If you're pregnant with my child, I have a right to know. That child would be my heir. No, I said softly, pulling my wrist free. That child would be my heir. My bloodline. My choice. What does that mean? I met his eyes one last time. It means that some crowns aren't given, Jarl. Some are inherited. And some are taken. I left him standing there, and I didn't look back. The next 3 months were a masterclass in patience and strategy. My grandmother continued my training while my pregnancy progressed, teaching me not just how to access my wolf but how to wield the gifts that came with the blood moon lineage. I could feel other wolves now. Not just their locations but their emotions, their loyalties, their fears. I could sense the threads that bound pack structure together and the weak points where those threads frayed. And I started pulling on those threads. Began small. A conversation here, a carefully planted rumor there. I started visiting the pack's outer territories, the families who lived on the edges, who felt forgotten by the central authority. The ones who remembered my father fondly. The ones who'd felt the sting of the current council's politics. I didn't tell them who I was, not fully. But I let them see me. Let them see my wolf. Let them feel the power that radiated from me now like heat from a forge. Wolves started showing up at my grandmother's cottage. Not to challenge me but to offer service. To ask questions. To pledge loyalty to whatever I was becoming. You're building a following, Brynhild observed one evening as we watched a group of younger wolves train in the clearing behind her cottage. Do you know what you're doing? I'm giving them an alternative, I said. Jarl built his power on alliances and politics. But real loyalty comes from something deeper. These wolves feel it. They recognize what I am even if they don't have words for it yet. You're challenging his authority. I'm claiming mine. And when he realizes what you're doing, he already knows. I'd felt him watching from the shadows more than once. Had sensed his presence in the forest, observing but never approaching. He's just trying to decide what to do about it. That decision came sooner than I expected. I was 6 months pregnant when Jarl finally came to me again. Not sending warriors, not summoning me, but coming himself in the dark of night, shifting from wolf to human form at my grandmother's boundary stones. Brynhild let him in without a word, then disappeared into her sleeping quarters, leaving us alone by the firelight. He looked exhausted. The burden of leadership had carved new lines around his eyes, and there was a tightness to his jaw that spoke of sleepless nights and impossible decisions. I need to know, he said without preamble. I need to know if that child is mine. And if it is, then we need to talk about the future. I gestured for him to sit, and we faced each other across my grandmother's table like negotiators rather than mates. Signa is pregnant, he said, and the words hit me like a physical blow. She announced it 2 weeks ago. The council is celebrating. 2 heirs will secure the bloodline, they say. I kept my expression neutral even as jealousy and hurt churned in my gut. Congratulations. Don't. His voice was sharp. Don't pretend this doesn't matter. I can feel what it does to you. The bond doesn't lie, Astrid. The bond. I laughed bitterly. You want to talk about the bond now? After you rejected me, chose her. I never rejected you. I chose duty over desire. There's a difference. Not to me, there isn't. We sat in silence for a long moment, the only sound the crackling of the fire. I've been investigating the Ravenskas, he said finally. Digging deeper into your father's death. I have evidence now. Concrete proof that Thorvald gave the order and arranged the rogue attack. What are you going to do with this evidence? That depends on you. On me. If I expose Thorvald, I destroy my alliance with the Ravenskas. The pack could fracture. We could end up in civil war. Exactly what I've been trying to prevent. But if you're carrying my child, if you're building your own following, then maybe we have another option. What option? He leaned forward, his eyes intense. Share power with me. Become my second Luna. Your child would still be an heir, would still have status and protection. The wolves who've been following you would fold back into the pack structure. And together we could expose Thorvald without threatening the stability of everything I've built. Second Luna. The words tasted like ash. You want me to be your mistress officially. To watch you play husband to Signa while raising my child as the spare heir. I want you to be safe. I want our child to be protected. I want. He reached across the table toward me, then stopped. His hand hanging in the air between us. I want you, Astrid. I've always wanted you. But I have responsibilities that go beyond what I want. And I'm supposed to accept scraps from your table. Accept being second place forever. You wouldn't be second place. The wolves are already choosing you. They feel what you are even if they don't understand it yet. As second Luna, you'd have real power, real influence. I already have real power. I stood, my hand on my swollen belly. I don't need you to give me what I've already claimed. Then what do you want? The question hung in the air, and I realized I'd been building toward this moment for months. Since the night he crowned Signa. Since the night my wolf emerged. Since the first time I felt my child move inside me and understood what was at stake. I want you to make a choice, I said. A real choice. Not a political calculation, not a strategic alliance, but a choice based on what's right. That's what I'm trying to do. No. You're trying to have everything. You're trying to keep your perfect Luna and your political alliances and your true mate all neatly arranged so nothing disrupts your reign. But life doesn't work that way, Jarl. You can't serve two masters. You can't honor two bonds. Eventually you have to choose who you really are. And if I choose wrong, I met his eyes steadily. Then my child will grow up knowing exactly what kind of man their father was. And when they're old enough, when they come into their power, they'll make their own choice about whether you deserve to keep your crown. The threat was clear. Not immediate. Not violent. But inevitable. Jarl stood slowly. His expression unreadable. Is that what this is about? Taking my crown? This is about the truth finally mattering more than politics. About justice for my father. About children not growing up wondering why their bloodline was considered inconvenient. I never considered you inconvenient. Didn't you? I moved toward him, close enough that the bond flared between us, painful and perfect and impossible to ignore. Then prove it. Show me that the man who whispered promises in the dark is the same man who rules this pack. Show me that honor means something more than expedience. How? Expose Thorvald. Not as a political maneuver but because it's right. Reject Signa. Not to claim me, but because you can't honor a mate bond built on your true mate's father's murder. And trust that the wolves will follow strength and integrity more than they'll follow comfortable alliances. You're asking me to risk everything. I'm asking you to be worthy of the crown you wear. He stared at me for a long moment, and I could see the war raging behind his eyes. Then he turned and walked to the door. I need time, he said. You don't have much of it. My child will be born in 3 months. And when they are, when the blood moon line is reborn into this world, every wolf in 7 territories will feel it. They'll know what we are. And you'll have to decide which side of history you want to be on. He left without another word. My daughter was born during the winter solstice, on the longest night of the year, when the moon hung full and silver over snow-covered forests. The labor was excruciating and transcendent. My grandmother attended me while I screamed and pushed and felt like I was being torn apart and remade simultaneously. And when my daughter finally emerged, when I heard her first cry pierce the night air, something shifted in the world. Every wolf within 100 miles felt it. I knew they did because I felt them feeling it. A collective gasp of recognition, of power acknowledged, of something fundamental changing in the structure of pack hierarchy. My daughter was perfect. Impossibly perfect. She had my dark hair and Jarl's gold-flecked eyes, and when I held her to my chest, I felt her wolf stir immediately. Something that should have been impossible for a newborn. But she was Blood Moon. The rules didn't apply to her. "What will you name her?" Brynhild asked, her silver eyes bright with tears. "Ragna," I said. "After my father's mother. Ragna Thornawood Blood Moon." No mention of Eriksson. No acknowledgement of her father's line. This child was mine. We had barely gotten me cleaned up and settled when I felt them coming. Not a few curious wolves, but dozens. Hundreds maybe. Converging on the cottage like iron filings drawn to a magnet. Jarl arrived first, bursting through the door with his eyes wild and his hair disheveled, Signa and several pack warriors close behind. I felt. He stopped when he saw me sitting up in bed, my daughter in my arms. "Gods above, Astrid. What is she?" "She's your daughter," I said quietly. "And mine. And the first blood moon born in 7 generations." He moved toward us as if in a trance, and I let him. Let him kneel beside the bed. Let him reach out one trembling hand to touch Ragna's tiny fist. The moment his skin made contact with hers, every wolf in the vicinity felt it. The bond snapping into place, the recognition of true lineage, the undeniable proof of what she was. "She's..." He couldn't finish the sentence. "She's everything you were afraid of," Signa said from the doorway, her voice venomous. "Look at her, Jarl. Really look. She's not just your bastard daughter. She's a threat. If the other packs know what she is, what her bloodline can claim, then they'll know I've produced an heir worthy of legend," Jarl interrupted, his eyes never leaving Ragna's face. "They'll know the Silvercrest pack carries the Blood Moon line again. You can't seriously be considering legitimizing her." "I'm not considering it." He stood, still holding Ragna's tiny hand. "I'm doing it. She's my firstborn, my daughter. And..." He turned to look at me fully for the first time. "Her mother is my true mate. Something I should have acknowledged months ago." "Jarl, no." Signa's perfect composure cracked. "We have an agreement. We have a bond. I'm carrying your child." "You're carrying Thorvald's ambition," Jarl said coldly. "Did you think I didn't know? That I hadn't figured out your family's role in Beta Thornawood's death? That I hadn't realized the entire alliance was built on blood and lies?" The room went silent except for Ragna's small sounds. "You can't prove anything," Signa hissed. "I have documents. Testimony from the rogues Thorvald hired. A confession from one of his former guards." Jarl pulled a leather folder from his coat. "I've been building this case for months. I was trying to find a way to handle it quietly, to avoid civil war. But seeing my daughter, feeling what she is, I realize I've been choosing wrong all along." He turned to me. "You were right. About all of it. I was trying to serve 2 masters. Trying to have honor and expedience. But real strength means choosing truth even when it costs everything." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I reject the bond with Signa Ravenska. I'm saying I'm bringing charges against Thorvald Ravenska for murder and conspiracy. And I'm saying that if you'll have me, if you can forgive the months I wasted trying to avoid this moment, I'm claiming you as my true Luna." My heart was pounding. This was everything I'd imagined. Everything I'd wanted. Yet, what about the child Signa carries? Will be provided for and protected, but will not be my heir. Ragna is my firstborn. Ragna is Blood Moon. There's no question of succession. Signa let out a sound between a sob and a scream. "You're destroying everything. The alliances, the peace, everything you've built." "I'm building something better," Jarl said firmly. "Something based on truth instead of convenience. And if that means civil war, if that means fighting for what's right instead of what's easy, then so be it." He knelt before me again, and this time he took my hand. Astrid Thornawood, will you be my Luna? Will you rule beside me, not as second choice or political necessity, but as my true mate and equal? Will you help me rebuild this pack into something worthy of our daughter? I looked down at Ragna, sleeping peacefully in my arms despite the chaos around us. I thought about my father, about the justice he'd never received, about my grandmother, watching from the corner with knowing eyes, about all the months of pain and transformation and discovering who I really was. Yes, I said. But not because you're offering me a crown. I already have power of my own. I say yes because you finally chose truth. Because you're finally the man I believed you could be. He kissed my hand, and the mate bond sang between us, finally acknowledged, finally accepted, finally right. 3 months later, I stood in the same great hall where I'd watched Jarl crown Signa. But everything had changed. The Ravenskas had fractured from the alliance, taking their territories with them, but the neighboring packs had rallied to us instead. Drawn by the legend of the Bloodmoon's return, by Jarl's willingness to pursue justice over politics, by the sheer power they could feel radiating from Ragna even as an infant. Thorvald had been executed for my father's murder. Signa had retreated to her family's remaining territory, her pregnancy ending in a daughter who would be protected but never carry the Eriksson name. And I stood before 7 assembled packs, wearing a gown of silver and midnight blue, my daughter in my arms, waiting for the moment that would change everything. Jarl spoke first, his voice carrying through the hall with alpha command. 18 years ago, Beta Magnus Thornawood was murdered defending pack territory. We called it an honorable death. We built monuments to his sacrifice. But we buried the truth with his body. Tonight we honor that truth. Tonight, we acknowledge what was stolen and what has been returned. He gestured to my grandmother, who stepped forward carrying something wrapped in ancient silk. When she unwrapped it, the crowd gasped. It was a crown. Not the moonstone circlet that Signa had worn, that had been returned to the Ravenska vaults. This was older, more primal. Silver and bone and stones that seemed to hold moonlight inside them. The crown of the Blood Moon Alphas. Hidden for 7 generations, waiting. This crown belonged to Ursa Bloodmoon, Brynhild announced, her voice stronger than I'd ever heard it. Last of the Silver Alphas. When she died, the council feared what her descendants might become. They scattered the bloodline, diluted it, tried to breed it into obscurity. But blood remembers. Power remembers. And tonight, the Blood Moon line returns to its rightful place. Jarl took the crown from her hands and turned to me. Astrid Thornawood, daughter of Magnus, granddaughter of Brynhild, descendant of Ursa Bloodmoon. You are not becoming my Luna tonight. You are reclaiming what should never have been taken from your family. You are not accepting power from me. You are acknowledging power that was always yours. He placed the crown on my head, and the moment it touched my hair, the world exploded into sensation. I felt every wolf in the hall. Felt their shock, their awe, their submission. Felt the threads that connected us all surge with recognition. Felt the ancient magic that had been sleeping in my blood roar to full awakening. My wolf surged forward, not taking control but merging with me so completely that I stopped being Astrid and Wolf and became simply myself, whole and unified and powerful in a way that transcended anything I'd imagined. When I spoke, my voice carried layers, human and wolf and something older, something primal. I accept this crown not as a gift from an alpha, but as a reclamation of what my family was and what my daughter will become. I accept this power not to dominate, but to restore balance. And I promise you this: never again will bloodline be treated as inconvenient. Never again will truth be sacrificed for politics. Never again will the strong prey on the weak without consequence. The hall erupted in howls, not of challenge but of acceptance, joy, of recognition that something fundamental had shifted in the pack hierarchy. Jarl stepped beside me and took my hand. "Together," he said quietly, "just for me." "Together," I agreed. But the coronation was just the beginning. Over the following weeks, as I settled into my role as Luna, As I learned to wield the political power that came with the crown alongside the supernatural power of my bloodline, darker truths began to surface. My grandmother called me to her cottage one night when Ragna was sleeping peacefully in the pack nursery, protected by a dozen loyal wolves. "There's something you need to know," Brynhild said, her silver eyes troubled. "Something I kept from you until you were strong enough to bear it. What could be worse than everything I've already learned?" "Your mother," she said softly. "Ingrid. She didn't disappear into grief when your father died. She was taken." The floor seemed to tilt beneath me. Taken. By who? By those who wanted to ensure the blood moon line never resurfaced. Your mother was descended from a different branch. Through her, you carry double the lineage. Pure blood moon from both sides. That's why you're so powerful. That's why Ragna is what she is. Where is she? Is she alive? I don't know. I've been searching for 18 years. But Astrid. She gripped my hands. If she's alive, if they've kept her alive all this time, it's because they're planning something. 'Cause they know what you are now. What Ragna is. And they'll come for you both eventually. The revelation should have terrified me. Instead, I felt the same cold clarity I'd felt the night Jarl crowned Signa. "Let them come," I said. "I'm not the frightened, wolfless girl I was a year ago. I'm Luna of the Silvercrest Pack. I'm Blood Moon reborn. And I'm a mother. Anyone who threatens my daughter will learn exactly what that means." The challenge came 3 months later, during the spring equinox gathering where all the allied packs met to settle disputes and renew bonds. A pack I'd never heard of arrived. The Ironwood Pack, from territories so far north they were considered more legend than reality. Their alpha was a woman named Solveig Frostborn, and the moment she entered the gathering grounds, I felt something I'd never felt before. Another blood moon. She was older than me, maybe 40, with the same silver eyes as my grandmother and a presence that made even Jarl's alpha authority seem diminished. She walked through the assembled packs directly to where I sat beside Jarl on the high seats, and she stared at me with an intensity that made my wolf bristle. "So," she said, her voice like winter wind, "the lost line surfaces at last. Tell me, little Luna. Did your grandmother explain what power really costs? Or did she just teach you how to look impressive while wearing a crown?" "Solveig Frostborn." Brynhild stepped forward from where she'd been sitting with the elders. "You have no right." "I have every right, Brynhild Thornawood. Or should I say Brynhild Bloodmoon. How long did you hide in that cottage, pretending to be just a strange old woman, while you groomed your granddaughter to reclaim what you couldn't?" The gathering had gone silent. Every wolf present could feel the power radiating from both of us, could sense that something larger than pack politics was playing out. "Who are you?" I asked, standing to face her properly. "I'm your great-aunt," Solveig said, and the words hit like a thunderclap. "Ursa Bloodmoon's youngest daughter, taken by the northern packs when they scattered the bloodline. They thought they could breed the power out of me, marry me to weak alphas and dilute what I was. Instead I killed them. Every alpha they gave me to. Every wolf who tried to control me. And I built my own pack from the survivors. Wolves who understand that true power doesn't bow, doesn't compromise, doesn't share crowns with lesser bloodlines." She looked at Jarl with undisguised contempt. "You've made yourself weak, child. You've tied yourself to an alpha who chose politics over you. Who crowned another woman while you were pregnant with his heir. Who only claimed you after he had no other choice. That's not." I started, but she cut me off. "I'm issuing a formal challenge. Not for your mate. I have no interest in that weak male. I'm challenging you for leadership of the Blood Moon line. For the crown you wear. For the right to train your daughter in the old ways, the true ways, without the taint of modern pack politics corrupting her." The challenge was ancient law. Bloodline to bloodline. I couldn't refuse without appearing weak, without potentially losing the loyalty of the wolves who'd followed me because of what I was. "And if I defeat you?" "Yes. You won't. I've had 40 years to master what you've barely discovered. I've killed more powerful wolves than you've ever met. But if by some miracle you do, you'll gain my pack, my territories and my knowledge. everything I've built. And if you defeat me, you'll be dead, and I'll take your daughter to raise properly. Away from this farce of shared power and political marriages. Away from the weakness that destroyed our line in the first place. Ragna. She was threatening Ragna. Every protective instinct I had roared to life, and my wolf surged forward with a snarl that made several nearby wolves back away. Accepted, I heard myself say. Name the time and place. Now, Solveig said with a savage smile. Here. Let all the packs witness which of us deserves the blood moon crown. The gathered packs formed a massive circle in the center of the grounds. Jarl tried to intervene, tried to stop it, but this was beyond alpha authority. This was bloodline law, older than pack structure, older than treaties and alliances. My grandmother pressed something into my hand before I entered the circle. A small pouch that smelled of herbs and old magic. Your mother gave this to me before she was taken, she whispered. She said if you ever faced a power greater than your own, you should trust what's in your blood more than what you've learned. I didn't have time to ask what she meant. Solveig was already shifting, and her wolf was magnificent. Larger even than mine, her fur almost pure white with silver highlights that caught the light like frost. I shifted to meet her, and we circled each other while hundreds of wolves watched in breathless silence. She attacked first, faster than I expected, her jaws snapping inches from my throat. I dodged and countered, but she was already moving, flowing like water, like she could predict my movements before I made them. We fought like that for what felt like hours but was probably only minutes. Every time I thought I had an opening, she was already somewhere else. Every attack I launched, she deflected effortlessly. She wasn't just experienced. She was brilliant, a master of combat who'd spent decades perfecting her skill. I was losing, badly. Blood matted my silver fur. My movements were getting slower, more desperate. I could hear Jarl shouting, could feel his panic through our bond, but I couldn't focus on anything except staying alive. Solveig finally got me pinned, her jaws around my throat, pressing just hard enough to make her point without killing me yet. Yield, her wolf's voice echoed in my mind. You're powerful, but power without wisdom is just wasted potential. Yield, and I'll make your death quick. I should have yielded. Should have submitted. Should have accepted that I was outmatched. But then I felt it. The pouch my grandmother had given me, crushed against my side in the struggle. And something inside it pulsed with warmth, with recognition, with a different kind of power than I'd been trying to use. Trust what's in your blood more than what you've learned. I stopped fighting. Stopped struggling against Solveig's hold. And instead I reached for something deeper than my wolf, deeper than the combat training, deeper than the magic my grandmother had taught me. I reached for the bond. Not the mate bond with Jarl, but the blood bond. The connection to every wolf in the circle who carried even a drop of blood moon lineage. The threads that tied me to Solveig herself, to my grandmother, to my missing mother, to Ragna sleeping in the nursery. And I pulled. It wasn't dominance. It wasn't control. It was connection. It was belonging. It was the fundamental truth that we were all part of something larger than individual power or ambition. I felt the moment Solveig felt it too. The way her grip loosened, the way her wolf went still. Because she felt it, she felt all the blood moon descendants across 7 territories, felt their recognition and their choice, and she felt them choosing me. Not because I was stronger. Because I understood something she'd forgotten. Power wasn't about standing alone. It was about connection. About building something together rather than ruling through fear. I shifted back to human form beneath her wolf, bleeding and exhausted but alive. You're right, I said, my voice carrying through the silent circle. I'm not as strong as you. I'm not as experienced. But that's not what makes an alpha. What makes an alpha is understanding that true strength comes from lifting others up, not standing on their backs. Solveig shifted back as well, her silver eyes unreadable. Pretty words. But the world doesn't run on pretty words, child. Maybe it should start. I pushed myself to sitting, wincing at the pain. You've spent 40 years alone, Solveig. 40 years killing anyone who tried to control you, building power through fear and domination. And what do you have to show for it? Wolves who follow you because they're terrified of what you'll do if they don't. I have survival. Have strength. I have. You have nothing, I said softly. No family who claims you. No bonds that nourish you. No legacy beyond violence. Is that really what you want Ragna to become? For the first time, something cracked in Solveig's expression. You don't understand. After they scattered us, after they took everything, trust became weakness. Connection became a weapon others could use against you. I know. I thought about my mother, about my father's murder, about all the ways the Blood Moon line had been systematically destroyed. But if we let their cruelty turn us into monsters, then they've won. They've accomplished exactly what they set out to do. They've made the Blood Moon line so dangerous that it had to destroy itself. So what are you proposing? Join us. Not as a conquered enemy but as family. Teach me what you know. Help me protect Ragna. And in return, finally have a pack that doesn't fear you. They honor you. Solveig stared at me for a long moment. Then, slowly, she knelt before me. Not in submission but in recognition. You're either the wisest Blood Moon in 7 generations, she said, or the most foolish. Time will tell which. Probably both, I admitted. But I'd rather be foolish and connected than wise and alone. She laughed, a sound like breaking ice, and helped me to my feet. The gathered packs erupted in howls and cheers, but all I could focus on was Jarl rushing forward to catch me as my legs gave out, and my grandmother's tears as she embraced both me and Solveig. 2 weeks later, after I'd healed and Solveig had begun the difficult process of integrating her pack with ours, my great-aunt came to me with something she'd kept hidden for 40 years. Your mother, she said without preamble. Ingrid. I know where she is. I was feeding Ragna at the time, and I nearly dropped her. What? The pack that took her. They've been keeping her in the far northern territories, using her bloodline to try to breed their own Blood Moon descendants. When I heard you'd surfaced, when I heard about Ragna, I started investigating. I found her. Is she alive? Alive. But Astrid. Solveig's expression was grave. They've had her for 18 years. She's been through things I won't describe while you're holding your daughter. She may not be the woman your father loved anymore. I don't care what they've done to her. My voice came out fierce and certain. She's my mother. She's Ragna's grandmother. And she's coming home. It won't be easy. The pack holding her is powerful and has no interest in diplomacy. Then we won't use diplomacy. I looked up at Solveig. You said you wanted to teach me the old ways. Consider this lesson 1. We assembled a force unlike anything the modern packs had seen. Not just warriors, but every wolf with even a trace of Blood Moon heritage. 50 strong, each of us connected through blood and purpose. The Thornwald pack didn't stand a chance. We hit their territory at dawn, and I led the charge myself. Not with Jarl's political authority, but with pure Blood Moon power. I could feel every wolf in their pack, could sense their hierarchies and loyalties, could pull on the threads that bound them together. I didn't kill anyone. Didn't have to. I simply showed them what real power looked like, and they submitted. Their alpha, Halvard Thornwald, fought until Solveig broke 3 of his legs and pinned him in the center of his own great hall. Where is Ingrid Blood Moon? I demanded. He spat blood. You'll never. I didn't let him finish. I reached into his mind, something I'd discovered I could do only recently, and pulled the information directly from his thoughts. She was in the basement, in a cell that reeked of silver and wolfsbane, in darkness that had been her reality for 18 years. I found her myself, wouldn't let anyone else go with me. When I opened the cell door and saw the woman huddled in the corner, gaunt and scarred and feral, my heart shattered. Mama, I whispered. She looked up, and even through the damage and the years, I saw my grandmother's silver eyes looking back at me. Magnus, she whispered, and I realized she thought I was my father. No, Mama. I'm Astrid, your daughter. I've come to take you home. Recognition flickered. Then tears. Then a sound somewhere between a laugh and a sob. My baby, she breathed. My baby girl. You're so big. So strong. So, she stopped, her head tilting. You smell like power. Like the old bloodline. I'm blood moon, mama. Like you. Like grandmother. And I have a daughter, your granddaughter. Her name is Ragna, and she's waiting to meet you. My mother let me lead her out of that cell, out of that basement, out of the pack that had stolen 18 years of her life. And when we emerged into sunlight for the first time in almost 2 decades, every wolf present bent their knee. Not to me but to her. 'Cause she had survived. And survival like that demanded honor. The months that followed were about healing. My mother slowly came back to herself with the help of pack healers and my grandmother's patient care. She'd never be exactly who she was before. Trauma changes people in permanent ways. But she was home, she was safe, and she got to hold her granddaughter. Jarl and I found our rhythm as co-rulers, learning to balance his political instincts with my bloodline authority. It wasn't always easy. We fought, we disagreed, we struggled with the reality that mate bonds don't erase individual perspectives. But we chose each other. Every day. Not because fate demanded it, but because we wanted to build something together that was worth the struggle. Solveig became Ragna's primary teacher, passing down the combat skills and old magic that had been almost lost. My fierce great-aunt softened around my daughter in ways that shocked everyone, and watching them together, Solveig's winter severity melting before Ragna's baby laughter, healed something in both of them. The Thornwald pack was absorbed into our territories, their alpha exiled, and their wolves given the choice to stay or go. Most stayed. Turned out, when you offer wolves dignity instead of domination, they're remarkably loyal. And slowly, carefully, we began reaching out to other scattered blood moon descendants, bringing them home, building not just a pack but a true family. 6 months after my coronation, I stood on the balcony of the Great Hall with Ragna in my arms, watching the sun set over territories that were finally at peace. Jarl came up behind me, wrapping his arms around us both. What are you thinking? He asked. I'm thinking about the girl I was a year ago, I said. Standing in this hall, invisible, broken, watching you crown another woman and thinking my world was ending. Astrid. I'm not finished. I leaned back against him. I'm thinking about how sometimes the worst thing that happens to us is actually the catalyst for becoming who we were always meant to be. If you had chosen me that night, if you had made the easy choice, I would have been your Luna. But I never would have discovered my power. Never would have found my mother. Never would have united the blood moon line. So you're saying I did you a favor? His tone was teasing, but I heard the guilt underneath. I'm saying that life is more complicated than right and wrong, good and bad. You made mistakes. I made mistakes. But we both kept choosing to grow instead of staying broken. And now, I looked down at Ragna, at her perfect sleeping face and the power that pulsed beneath her skin like a promise. Now we raise her to be better than both of us. We teach her that power is responsibility, not privilege. That strength comes from connection, not domination. That sometimes the crown you deserve isn't given to you. It's claimed through becoming worthy of wearing it. Ragna stirred in my arms, her eyes opening to reveal that distinctive gold-flecked gaze that marked her as both Blood Moon and Eriksson. She's going to change everything, Jarl said softly. She already has. Ragna took her first shift on her 3rd birthday, something that should have been impossible, but she was Blood Moon through and through. Her wolf was silver like mine but larger, and she had an instinctive control that had taken me months to develop. She was also developing other abilities. She could sense emotions before she could articulate them. She could calm aggressive wolves with a touch. She could see the threads that connected pack members and instinctively knew how to strengthen them. She was everything the prophecies had whispered about, everything the old packs had feared. And she was surrounded by people who loved her, protected her, and would teach her to use her power wisely. The allied packs now numbered 12, drawn together not by political necessity but by genuine respect for what we were building. Pack territories that had warred for generations were finding common ground. Bloodline prejudices that had lasted centuries were beginning to crumble. It wasn't perfect. Change never is. We still had enemies. Packs that feared what the blood moon return meant, individuals who preferred the old ways of dominance and control, political factions that resented a Luna with power independent of her alpha. But we faced them together. As mates, as parents, as leaders who understood that true strength came from community, not isolation. My mother had fully integrated back into pack life and now ran our healing programs, using her own trauma to help others who'd survived captivity and abuse. My grandmother had finally retired, spending her days teaching young wolves about the old ways and the old magic. Solveig commanded our warriors and had begrudgingly admitted that maybe connection wasn't weakness after all. And me. I wore my crown with pride now. Not because it made me powerful, but because it represented everything I'd fought for. Justice for my father. Freedom for my mother. Future for my daughter. I stood in the Great Hall, the same hall where my story had truly begun, and watched as wolves from all 12 packs celebrated the spring equinox together. Watched as children who would have grown up in enemy territories played together without seeing difference. Watched as the old prejudices and fears slowly gave way to something new. Jarl found me in the crowd, pulling me close. "Any regrets?" he asked. I thought about the pain, the heartbreak, the months of thinking I was worthless, the terror of pregnancy alone, the struggle to discover and claim my power. "Not a single one," I said truthfully. "Every moment led me here. Led us here. Led to Ragna." "She's watching us," Jarl observed. I followed his gaze and saw our daughter standing with Solveig, her little hand in her grey tant's scarred one. Her eyes fixed on us with that unsettling awareness that reminded me she was so much more than an ordinary child. She waved and I waved back. "She's going to have to make her own choices someday," I said. "About what kind of leader she wants to be. What kind of power she wants to wield. And we'll support whatever she chooses. Even if she rejects everything we've built. Even then. Because that's what you taught me, Astrid. That love means trusting people to become who they're meant to be, not forcing them into who we need them to be." I kissed him then, in front of all 12 packs, claiming my mate as thoroughly and publicly as he'd once failed to claim me. When we broke apart, the hall was cheering. Not for politics or alliance or strategy. Just for two people who'd found their way to each other through fire and pain and impossible choices. Just for love that had survived when everything said it shouldn't. And that, I thought, was the most powerful magic of all. So tell me, have you ever felt invisible? Have you ever stood in a room full of people who were supposed to see you, supposed to know you, and felt like you were nothing but shadow? Have you ever carried a secret so powerful it could change everything, but had no one who believed you were worth listening to? Because here's what Astrid's story teaches us. Sometimes being overlooked is the universe's way of giving you time to become who you're truly meant to be. Sometimes rejection is redirection. Sometimes the crown they won't give you is because you're meant to forge your own. I want to know where you're watching this from. What city are you in right now? Comment below and tell me your city so I can send you a virtual hug, because wherever you are, whatever you're going through, I want you to know something. Your bloodline matters. Not literal wolves and magic, but the strength in your DNA, the resilience your ancestors passed down, the power you carry even when no one acknowledges it. You are not broken. You are not defective. You are not invisible. You are becoming. And maybe, just maybe, the thing you're carrying right now, the secret power or the hidden strength or the unacknowledged truth, is exactly what the world needs you to bring forward. Not because someone gave you permission, but because you're finally ready to claim it. So tell me, what crown are you ready to stop waiting for and start forging for yourself? Drop your city below. And let's build a community of wolves who refuse to stay invisible. Who refuse to accept other people's limitations. Who know that the bloodline running through our veins carries power our enemies hoped we'd never discover. Tell me where you're from. Tell me you're ready.